There's a cat over there. He will probably run in at some point in the video. Just try and ignore it. I might cut around it. It'll probably end up being in though. So, Conor McGregor has recently announced his return fight against Michael Chandler later on in this year, and I kind of want to explore in this video Conor McGregor's career as a whole, but more specifically where he's at now and whether or not this is the right move for him. You know, you got to think back. Conor McGregor is the biggest star to ever have come out of MMA, and that is not up for debate whatsoever. He's made the most money, made the UFC the most money, therefore making Dana White the most money. There was a point where a lot of people would have never heard of MMA, never heard of UFC. They've heard of Conor McGregor, whether that be fighting Mayweather, whether that just be some clips from his interview, or his press conferences or whatever, or even just some of his highlights. And that will have brought a lot of people into mixed martial arts. When you look at, in 2016, being the first double champ in the UFC to hold 2 belts at the same time was ridiculous. And you see a lot of fighters now saying, I'm going to move up and fight for the next belt. You've seen Alex Pereira's won middleweight and light heavy. Sean O'Malley wants to fight at 145. Topuria wants to fight at 155. Islam wants to fight at 170. And Leon wants to fight at 185. You know, there is a bit of it's now a common thing that UFC fighters go for. And, you know, with Conor doing it, having never defended the title, it kind of, I feel, has paved the way for these fighters to, in my opinion, prematurely jump up in weight. When you look at Conor's never defended a belt. He's had 3 title fights. Every single one has been the challenger. So when you look at that, I feel like at that time it was like he's the biggest star. Eddie Alvarez was a pretty, you know, he was another guy who people thought he would lose to, but it's another good stylistic matchup, a brawler who Conor could kind of work around. It made sense to let him to let him move up at that time. And also, when you looked at him, he did struggle to make 145. So health-wise, obviously, it makes sense to let him move up to 155. But let's just bring this back to McGregor really quick. When he won that second belt, he was on top of the world. He was mixed martial arts, at least to the casual audience. And then he goes on to fight Mayweather. And I think that's what's put the UFC off doing that, because now he's transcended mixed martial arts. He's now bigger than the sport and bigger than the UFC, and that makes it hard to control them. And the UFC love to be able to control their fighters. What they want, because they no longer rely on pay-per-view sales as much as boxing does. They have the television deals, so the brand is more important than the fighters fighting. So when that's the case, you don't want stars particularly. You want people who will bring in interest so that they'll watch the UFC, but you really want them to be watching the UFC rather than Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler or Dustin Poirier or whatever. That's what the UFC want, because that gives them the most power and control to say, you should be lucky to be fighting in our league. And it's not. It wasn't that case with Conor McGregor. It was, I've made you. He's probably, as much as he's the most paid MMA fighter, probably the most underpaid fighter, definitely, maybe even athlete, in terms of what he has done for that company and what he's earned the people who don't fight compared to what he himself earned fighting, which is ridiculous. And now, talking more currently, he's got 2 fights remaining on his current UFC deal, and according to a recent interview he did, I believe with Ariel Helwani, he has not received an extension offer from the UFC, which I think is a bit confusing, considering one of the leading theories on why he hadn't fought yet was the UFC didn't want to book him until they'd re-signed him, because they don't want him doing what Nate Diaz did, fighting out his contract and then walking away, you know, with still a massive star power to draw in an audience for him to say, go box Manny Pacquiao, or like he's spoken about before, box KSI. They don't want him to do that, which is I think why the opponents potentially that we're talking about are people who you'd kind of expect this Conor McGregor to lose to. Michael Chandler is stylistically, I think, an opponent which prime Conor McGregor would have eaten for breakfast. He's He's not the most technically gifted, not the most intelligent fighter. He's hard as nails, and he's a very well-rounded fighter, and he's very entertaining. But it's someone who Conor would have easily been able to not take much damage to, counter him, pick him apart, and finish him in a couple rounds, I believe. And also the other opponent they're talking about is Dustin Poirier again, who he's just lost to twice in a row. One by knockout, one by TKO doctor stoppage, leg break, but he did not look like he was winning that fight at all. And when you look at Nate Diaz, his last fight, obviously he ended up fighting Tony Ferguson, but it was booked to be Khamzat Chimaev, and that only didn't happen because Khamzat didn't make weight. So I believe that fight was booked to make Nate Diaz look as bad as possible, so that if he did end up fighting for the PFL, or if he did end up boxing Jake Paul, people wouldn't be as impressed or as entertained if Nate lost, or if Nate did win, they would look down on Jake even more. And I believe that's what they kind of want to do with Conor McGregor if he doesn't re-sign. They want him to sort of be like, oh, he was great once, but he's past it now. You know, not enough activity. We've heard Dana White say he's a very rich man. They're trying to paint this picture of Conor McGregor as if he's reached the top of the mountain and he's falling back down. He's over the hill and he can't hang with the elite guys. Which Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier are the elite of that division outside the champ. And also, with the Dustin Poirier one, there's a lot of talk right now of Dustin Poirier actually fighting for the title. And there is, I would still back Islam, there is a chance he does beat Islam. So you want to give Conor McGregor, after not winning since 2020, January 2020, not fighting since, up until this next fight, July 2021, you want to give him a title shot after one fight against Michael Chandler, who also lost to Dustin Poirier by submission, I believe, in the second or third round. And another person who's lost to Justin Gaethje. To me, it does not make sense for Conor Poirier for right now. And I don't think he's going to re-sign with the UFC. I think he's going to go off to do boxing, a couple boxing fights, make a load of money, and bounce. And that's what I think will happen. And if we're looking at Conor right now, obviously he's just come back off he's currently, I believe, in press tour for Roadhouse. I haven't seen the film yet. The trailer's not looking promising, if I'm being honest. But, you know, I'll go in with an open mind. I will probably end up watching it. And when you look at him in the interviews, he's not the same guy. Even in 2021, when he was just about to fight Poirier, he had this presence in the interviews, and he was putting his sentences together. He can't put sentences together right now. I know that sounds bad coming from me. I stutter a lot, but you know, he's built his entire brand off being able to trash talk essentially, and he was the best at it in combat sports. And now you see him, you know, struggle his way through a sentence, which, you know, a lot of people have put down to substance abuse problems, which I'm not going to comment on because I'm no expert on that. I could not tell you if that's what it's come from. It could be. I've seen a lot of people who have experience with that, or have known people who've gone through that and have said that, you know, he's showing clear signs. I'm not going to comment on that because I don't like commenting on things I don't know about. Even if you ignore the fact that it might be substance, he does not look like he's in the right frame of mind to go into a 3-month, 2.5-month camp to fight a very tough guy. We do not have a date now. It is June 29th. Conor has said this. I believe Michael Chandler has said this. I've heard from someone he said this. I've heard Conor McGregor say it on an interview. He said the UFC will officially announce it soon, so we hope it does. And you know what? As much as certain things he said have annoyed me, or as much as I don't think he's necessarily carried himself with the grace of a champion, I would not mind a Conor McGregor resurgence. I would not mind for him to win this fight, win his next fight, fuck the UFC off, and go and box whoever and make loads of money, in a similar way that Francis Ngannou did. For me, this fight, I do think Chandler will win. Chandler, by the way, probably arguably the biggest loser out of this, because he will not be getting Conor McGregor money for this. He will get more than he would for fighting Gaethje, more than he would for fighting Oliveira again, fighting Poirier again, whoever, but you will not be getting Conor McGregor money. And he's just wasted another 2 years of his career, which is not what you want at his age. He obviously has ambitions of fighting for a title. I don't think he'll ever win a title. You never know, But yeah, I do think he will beat Conor just based off their track history. He's been, as much as he's not been in there for 2 years, he's still somehow been more active and fought higher level opponents. So that's my opinion on that. Let me know yours in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and like the video. Really helps me out. And let me know what content you want to see from me soon. I might be doing a preview. I probably won't at this point, but I will definitely be doing a review of the Wardley-Clark fight. And the fight I'm most looking forward to on that fight, Vidal Riley versus Lawal. Obviously the guy who just lost to Isaac Chamberlain, who is, you know, definitely on Vidal's hit list. I do think Vidal will win that fight. I might do a longer video sort of breaking down the card if I get time before it happens this weekend. But if not, I'll do a review of that the week after. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.